Okay. Why do I do this research? So less is more. What's the meaning behind it? After the seminar, I think you will get your own feeling and thoughts. Why should I point this? Forward the thing. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. About me, not much to say. Okay. Okay. The background of this research to examine the water resources management issues under one country, two systems. The reason behind is because water policy was Hong Kong's top priority. This was from our history. And we developed pretty much based on the water available, and then our city mushroomed. Then now we all know Hong Kong's water resources, pretty much the Guangdong-Hong Kong Water Supply Agreement set us to a stable and secure water supplies. This was the case since 1965, the first agreement signed, and then in 1985 we surpassed half of our supply from Dongjiang. However, the Dongjiang water supply with a cap. In year 2008, we have agreements signed by the Dongjiang Water Resources Bureau. This is to set a cap, the total amount that is possible to allocate to each of the cities that's fixed and cannot surpass. Hong Kong is one of those 6 cities. We also know that the Chinese government in year 2011 set up the so-called 3 red lines, which is the strictest management on the water resources and water use efficiency. Given the national framework, and we also need to understand that PRD's development is governed by these 5 integrated development plans. And this is under the National Development and Reform Committee's policy on PRD's long-term development, year 2008 to 2020. And before we get into it, just a quick recap on the overall situation of China. This is the big picture stuff. Overall, in China, the rain precipitation, the rainfall, the distribution is pretty much northern part is dry, southern part is rich, and this is PRD. We are in the rich zone. And for the water resources per capita, available water resources, the lighter the color, the less you get. And PRD, although we are rich in rainfall, but per capita water resources available is actually less. And we are in the same situation like in the northern dry area. Water usage. This is the map to show that the water utilized ratio, and the darker the color, the utilized ratio, the higher the utilized ratio. And PRD again is up to the maximum. We are fully utilize the water that is available. And if you use water, of course you emit. And the emit situation is that COD is a measure of the water, the pollutants in the water. And in terms of COD emissions, PRD, this is where we are. We are among those the highest emitters. The darker the color, the higher you emit. So overall, our situation is rich in water, less in per capita available amount. And then we use it up to the maximum, also emit a lot. Now, some important PRD characteristics to build into this big picture. What is PRD? It is a powerhouse of Chinese economy, and we all know. This is a particular region which use only 0.5% of the land area, but hosts 7 times of population density compared to the China average, use only 1% of the total national water resources, and also 7.5% of the energy consumption, but contributed to almost 10% of the GDP of the whole nation, and also more than a quarter of the export in total. In the short term, PRD used resources make the legendary miracle. However, this is up to a bottleneck. And PRD perspectives. Although we are stretched in terms of resources, but we're still in PRD region, we have a very ambitious development plan. The 5 integrated development plans, which will set PRD pretty much in future, would become mega-city clusters, not only just 1 or 2, but clusters of mega-cities. And also with new development and growth hotspots, these new SARs, Special Administrative Regions, such as Hengqin, Qianhai, and Nansha. With this in picture, that's the total plan. What does that mean to Hong Kong? And this is about the ocean plan. That means Hong Kong will be eventually still surrounded by manufacturing and industrial centers in the long run. It is now, it is going to be in the future. And the 2 service centers are here, and Hong Kong is here. So, looking at all of this information, then examining Hong Kong's water resources under one country, 2 systems is necessary. The future of, I call it one water, 2 systems. Right now we are actually using this one water, 2 systems, but how long can we go? It is doubtful. Water, if we talk about water resources, we would have to look into the population. And for Hong Kong, the growth and the water expansions directly linked. Population growth actually lead to, we have to deal with the water, and that's each of the stage, we have our waterworks expansion. And in the 3rd expansion, we can see the population growth newly added in each decade since 1950 until 1980. Each decade, we add probably 1 million population. This is just a new add. It is a very fast expansion in terms of population. And our waterworks also undergo massive expansion, but it cannot cope with the population growth. Therefore, Dongjiang water supply to Hong Kong got into the picture in 1965. With Dongjiang water supply getting into the picture, we gained much better water security and stability of supply. But then looking forward, we have our population is forecasted to grow at 1.5 million more by the year 2040. And this is, again, another huge addition. Now, the future supply of the water, that is the outlook. Let's take a look. Dongjiang, as I mentioned, we have a cap. How much water we can actually allocate to each city. This is set in year 2008. And for each cities, Guangzhou, Dongguan, Shenzhen, Heyuan, and Huizhou, this amount is fixed, same as Hong Kong. However, for Guangzhou, this is only fixed for 2 of the districts, Zhengcheng and Luogang. And this is the total Guangzhou city's water use. They tap into not only Dongjiang, but also Xijiang, Beijiang. Every resource is available. What tells us about this table is, this is the amount allowed to take, set in year 2008. However, by the time of year 2010, each of the cities already exceeded or close to what they are allowed to take. And Hong Kong is the one who behaved pretty well. We didn't overtake, we actually underused. For the forecast, the water demand for each of those cities, some of them I can get a direct number from the government source. There will be huge discrepancies and a shortage. And for the 2, I cannot get the exact data, but you can see the trend. They are going to be in very high water demand and also shortage. Then what does that mean to Hong Kong? Plus the 3 red lines kept by the Chinese government. Our future, is it as secured as we thought? So far, Hong Kong government, we govern our water resources management by this policy called Total Water Management Policy. The policy is using this as a principle. We contain our growth through conservation. Underneath, their management start with manage our demand. And also manage our supply. And demand management, we have tackled several issues. So this total package of the policy itself, we would say it's sound, reasonable, well thought. And in reality, how do we manage our water resources? Have we achieved in this total water management policy what we want? Let's take a further look. Some inconvenient truths. Start with, let's examine and our local water capacity, that's our reservoirs and the water gathering grounds. This is a historical trend from the year 1965 until year 2011. Each year's rainfall and each year's water collecting amounts, plus the Dongjiang water imported. Now what we could see is the trend in the past is the more we get the rainfall with the build of the waterworks, the more we can capture locally. However, the picture slightly distorted because of the Dongjiang water significantly increased importing in this point. And then, although we have a very high rainfall, the historical high in 1997, our water gathering locally is actually low. And if you look into the billboard put together, we're at the last of the billboard. The gathering of the water in that year is actually particularly low because we basically don't have a place to gather in those water. Water is being Dongjiang water stored in the reservoir. And then in this, what we can see is the underutilized of our local capacity. It's getting a little bit better during the years, but still we have never surpassed our historical water capacity, the local catchment historical record, which is in year 1983-84. And the other thing is the current water agreement between Hong Kong and Dongjiang governed by this principle called turnkey purchase, which is we actually pay the lump sum for the whole year's amount, but then daily we have the flexibility to decide how much water we're going to take from Dongjiang. That will be dependent on the local condition. If we have a rainy weather, we import it less, but if we have dry weather, we import it more. This is the local capacity, but it's a daily flexibility. Overall, each year we pay for the entitlement of this amount of water. And in reality, how much water we actually imported is here. And the discrepancies add up together. It is in the past 7 years, we actually paid for 7 years water, but what we get is actually just 6 years. In another term, to ensure that Hong Kong can have 99% of the security and stability to supply water, that makes sure even during once in 100 years extreme drought, we still have water running 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. We paid quite expensive amount for this security. That is almost like insurance buffer. And now let's look at the local water usage trend. From year 2000 until year 2012, we can see the freshwater usage we picked up in the year 2003. Year 2003 we picked at that time. And afterwards, slightly, we started to see some decreasement. And this is year 2008. We introduced a total water management strategy. And we can see there's some decreasement here. However, I need to draw your attention to the scale of the chart. It's actually started from 900. So if you calculate the amount of the water we decreased, still it's not significant enough. It's about like 1%, 2%, 3%. If it's average, probably just around the 1% decrease. On the other hand, this is the seawater usage. Seawater usage is steadily increased. And I need to make it clear, this increasement is not to say we have a massive seawater supplies to cover more population. This work still ongoing. It's not quite finished yet to reach our target of covering 85% of the population using the seawater for flush. Without massive seawater supply capacity in place, our seawater usage still grows significantly. And if you calculate it on average in the past 10 years, we actually use the seawater increasement is 30% around that. Now, our household usage, the attitudes and the behaviors. Water Supply Department completed a survey last year and released the results this year. That's about Hong Kong domestic water consumption pattern research. It's focused on freshwater usage. And the key results, I draw some. There are a lot of interesting findings here. And it is from the water rationing to wastewater, this kind of behavior change. It's actually take very short time. This is not their funding, by the way. It's my conclusion, because our last water rationing happens in year 1982. That's the last time we imposed water rationing control. However, in year 2094 to year 2006, we have the supply, like oversupply that caused spillage. And the Hong Kong Auditing Commission put out a quite good report in this period. Now, the usages of water consumption pattern, overall speaking, in Hong Kong, if we have a small household, say just one or two person, we actually consume more water per head, per capita, than the others. Under one roof, there are more people. And if we are living in a private house, we actually consume more than those living in a public house. If we have a domestic helper, we use more water. That's probably understandable. And water conservation, government put a lot of effort to educate people about water saving. And the willingness we can see, almost everybody is willing to save water. Great. But looking into the reality, action, what do they do? Less than half of them actually take any measure to save water. And why is that? The daily water usage, the consumption, let's see, what do we use the most? From the faucet, this is for all purposes of water use. And the laundry is about 13%. Shower, oh, Hong Kong people love shower. We use actually fresh water, 40% more just for shower. And then if we look into the seawater together with the fresh water, then this amount is even more interesting. Altogether, per day we consume about 220 liters of water. Among that, 41% is seawater. As we know, seawater in Hong Kong mainly used for toilet flush. There might be some other purposes used, but the amount is so small. So in this calculation, I just basically assume it's all for toilet flushing. Then if you add up these two together, shower and the toilet flush, what do we get? Hong Kong people really are bathroom goers, eh? I don't know how much time we spend on shower and going to the toilet, but look at the water we use. This is quite amazing. Now, we have our last water rationing in year 2082. Now we can spend water, use water just without even thinking. And the reason I have a look at the money. If we look at the money, the Dongjiang water purchase money, at the beginning it was pretty stable for a long time, and then it started to increase. This is the Dongjiang water we purchased. The purchase fee is increasing, and it's going to continue this trend without a doubt. However, our local water tariffs, we have maintained pretty much non-changed, except in year 2003, which is understood that's the SARS year. SARS attacked Hong Kong, and the government put a lot of measures to alleviate the hardship for people and for hygiene and health issue. So we have a big dip here. Now, what we can say is the current water tariff do not reflect the resource value. And our water is actually, you don't see it on your bill, but you are actually paying for that, because all the subsidies come from taxpayers. How much we subsidize our water? This chart shows us the expenditures of water supply departments each year how much they need to spend in able to supply us water without stopping. And this is what we pay for it from the consumer. The red line is all kinds of government subsidies. Government subsidies to our water overall on average is actually about 60% or above. Even though with such a heavy subsidies, still the amount of money connected from the customer and also from the subsidies cannot really cover the actual cost to supply water. And the water supply department operating on the deficit each year. Now, this is what we see. Freshwater subsidized over 60%. Seawater 100% subsidized. Seawater is free to supply, free to discharge. You pay nothing to use your seawater. Look at the seawater. More about seawater. Seawater supplied and used for free, but it is not a free resource. I made a rough calculation. By the way, there's no ready data available from government that I can get a cost of actual seawater supplied to us and also sewage treatment for it. Then I did my calculation by using the seawater supply amount abstracted from Water Supply Department's annual report. It's actually in the appendix, not in the actual report. If you don't look carefully, you don't see it. And the wastewater treatment total amount from Drainage Department. Then I get a ratio of seawater. Assume seawater used for toilet flush. Then in the wastewater, the ratio is around this. Then I get the total cost of wastewater treatment from Drainage Department. And then use this ratio, I get roughly estimated seawater toilet flushing cost. How much will cost us to treat it, not to count supply cost. And the amount is 487 million Hong Kong dollars. There is no such a thing as a free lunch. And the more the truth about seawater. We have no measure on seawater, no meters to measure how much we actually use it. We have no charge, free supply, free sewage service. And we also don't even have operating accounts individually or jointly about our water together, fresh or seawater. I trying to find out how much it actually costs to supply seawater to our household. The only reference I can get is from a former Water Service Department official who once mentioned roughly supplying seawater will cost 30% of what it will cost to supply fresh water. And as my calculation indicated, we spend that much to treat the wastewater from the seawater flushing. And don't forget, water supply and the drainage department, they both need to consume a lot of energy to get the water in our house and get it out, treat it, emit it safely to the environment. Water supply department and drainage are currently, they actually use more than 30% of the total HAR government's electricity bill. They are the biggest consumer in the government sector. Now, the truth of seawater is we don't know the cost. How much? Not clear. We don't know. Now, by those data I showed you, we can see our water practice locally actually compromise the principles internationally regarded, which is users pay and polluters pay. We see polluters, we don't pay. Users pay, we pay a little. Now, issues of water governance. And as we see, the facts itself can help consumer and behavior not complete. Lots of the facts we don't have a clear picture to understand, especially the invisible prices taxpayers pay for water, giving it to fresh or seawater. And the other thing is, government are trying to tackling resources for sustainable use. And we have the environmental department put out this blueprint for sustainable use of resources this year. However, water is not there. And we would have to think about, is it because of environmental department do not manage the water, they don't have a say, or is it because of lack of cross-departmental policy planning? No matter what, we need facts, and the facts is not complete. If we say Hong Kong's water resources now is one water, two systems, the future outlook, this picture, quite good to give you a visual identity. This is from Drainage Department, the Shenzhen project, which is used to contain flood. But then look at two sides. This is Shenzhen side, highly developed, and will be developed further. This is Hong Kong side. We are still pretty much remain a little bit greener. However, the system, if we are under one water, can this kind of two system continue? I think you will have your own thinking now. Conclusions. Facts speak for itself. Unfortunately, our facts about water is not clear enough. And one water going under two systems will not sustain. Yeah, okay, I'm giving a running, I'm about to finish. And we need to become a more responsible city, and water tariff reform is inevitable. So I have my policy recommendations, which immediately I think auditing department out to do something urgently. And then, of course, we have short-term and long-term plans. And this is my share with you. So thank you very much.